أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So the session, we apologize for kind of moving around some of the sessions, but we had some scheduling conflicts. Brother Hanif Ismail had to leave, so we moved the session earlier. My brothers and sisters, this particular session and this particular topic is of the most interest. I travel to different parts of the country, and this is one topic that I have seen almost universal interest by brothers and sisters, young and old, very interested in the issue of family in modern times. How do you raise a family in these times? This is something that touches every one of us, almost every one of us. If it's not your own children, maybe it's your grandchildren. Depending upon what stage of life you are in, this is something that every one of us is thinking about, is constantly dealing with. The most interesting part is, for medicine, you go to school, you get trained. For engineering, you go to school, you get trained. For every discipline, you go to school and you get trained, except parenting. And we chose this topic because you may be thinking here, well, wait a second, this is an ICNA program. We thought we were going to be talking about more about da'wah and those type of things, or tarbiyah. But really, this is something that we all have to deal with on an ongoing basis, on an everyday basis. So, in the next few minutes, inshallah, let me see by a show of hands if you have children. Okay. Let's see if you have children that are 5 years and older. Okay. If you have 5 and 15. If your children are 24 to 16.
24 to 16. 16 to 24.
Well, it depends how you look at them. If they are older than 24. So the good news is, you pretty much have a pretty good sample here in this room. Everyone, you have children of one age or the other. So I think, inshallah, this presentation is going to apply to you. The slide that I have here, the question on the next two slides, what I want to talk about is the why. Why do we want to talk about this subject? What is the importance of this subject? To understand the why part, I want to begin with this ayah of Quran. Now, I'm going to make everyone here a little bit uncomfortable, so bear with me. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Ayah that almost everybody memorizes, pretty much most everyone. Who can translate that for me? Please help me out. My Arabic is a little weak. Yes.
O you who believe,
louder.
O you who believe, save yourselves and your families from the fire.
Are you studying Arabic?
Yeah.
Oh, mashallah, mashallah. Oh, who you believe, save yourself and your families from the fire of hell. Save yourself. Qu anfusakum. And if you understand the Arabic language, what's your name?
Harun.
Harun. So Harun translated this for us. And by the way, that was the last translation you're going to do because you have been studying Arabic. No, so we have other ones coming out, so I'm just joking. Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. It's a direct command. It is a direct command. It wasn't presented in the form of maybe you should think about it, you should consider it. No. Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Protect yourself and your families from the fire of hell. This applies to every one of us. Everyone who has children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren. The idea is the same, that قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا. So that's one of the key reasons of why. The Prophet ﷺ said this. Who can read this, please? Somebody who is not studying Arabic. كُلُّكُمْ. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll raise my hand because I don't study Arabic.
That's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. كُلُّكُمْ راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته فالإمام راع وهو مسؤول عن رعيته, and so on. The Prophet ﷺ said that who's going to help me out? Translation, please, brothers or sisters. كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. Somebody can translate? Yes.
Every one of you is a shepherd.
Yes. And
Everybody is
responsible for their flock. Right? What does that tell me? That this is a responsibility that you can't wash your hands off of. No matter what role are you playing, if you are the father, you are the mother, you are the CEO, you are the leader of the organization, you are the imam of the masjid, whichever capacity or whatever your role is, you are going to be responsible for your ra'iyah, the people who are reporting to you, the people who you have custody of, the people who really belong to you. That basically, you have to be aware of this responsibility. Okay. Now, remember the famous incidents where Prophet ﷺ was giving khutbah. Now, khutbah is an important act. I mean, this is a religious act, and everyone, he is sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is on the minbar, he's giving khutbah. The Muslims are gathered, and he sees his grandson Hussein entering the masjid. And obviously he's kind of, maybe 2 or 3 years old, and he's fumbling and he's kind of falls down. Little kid. The Prophet ﷺ stops the khutbah, comes down from the minbar, walks through the aisles, goes and picks him up, brings him back in his lap, holding him, goes back on the minbar and continues the khutbah. Now what is that? If one of us, or sometimes in our masajid, you take a child in and the child is making noises. We have, mashallah, some beautiful children here. And many a times alhamdulillah, I think the culture and the environment is changing in North America, but many a times back home, in Pakistan and India and other parts of the world, if a child is making a noise, if a child is disturbing the gathering, how would the imam or the people in the first row look back there like, oh my God, you have committed a crime?
Yes, that's what we do.
Right? I heard somebody say, yeah, that's what they do. That's exactly right. And what does that do to that parent? Now he's hesitant. Now he's hesitant to bring that child into the masjid. And as a result of that, you understand the ramifications of that. Once that child is removed from the masjid, now, as a result of that, he may or may not be coming in the future. Parents are hesitant. And that sort of shows the mentality of our community. The famous story about this man who once, a Bedouin was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, and he saw him, this man saw the Prophet ﷺ kissing his grandchildren. And he asked him, he said, "O Prophet of Allah, I have 10 boys. I'm a macho man, right? I've never kissed any one of them." And this is very interesting. The Prophet ﷺ always was very polite in his answers. was very direct and very, non-confrontational. You don't see him being sarcastic. Very rarely. But look at his response. Who can translate this one? And read it for me and translate it, please. Help me out. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, أَوَ أَمْلِكُ أَن نَزَعَ اللَّهُ مِنْ قَلْبِكَ الرَّحْمَةِ. Who can translate that for me, please? Arabic students? Now this is getting tougher, right? Harun is thinking about it. He's like, okay, what can I say here? أَوَ أَمْلِكُ أَن نَزَعَ اللَّهُ مِنْ قَلْبِكَ الرَّحْمَةِ. Our sisters, maybe? I think there's something going on here. This brother, where are you from, brother? Yeah. Egypt. No, not qualified. No, I'm just joking. Go ahead.
Do I possess that Allah has taken mercy out of your heart?
Being sarcastic. I mean, he was so touched by this statement of this Bedouin. He says, what can I do for you if Allah has taken rahmah from your heart? What does that tell you? That tells you this act of being kind and being loving and being caring for your children is something that we all strive for. It's part of who we are as human beings. Let's continue to think about what are some of the other things that we know about children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الْمَالُ وَالْبَنُونُ زِينَةُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيا وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتُ خَيْرٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ ثَوَابًا وَخَيْرٌ أَمَلًا. We are made this way, my brothers and sisters. It's in our DNA to love our children. It's in our DNA to love children and wealth. We are programmed this way. There's nothing we can do about it. It's part of who we are. And if we don't exhibit that, there's something is wrong with us. Your children, now for a moment, I know many of you have raised your hand and said, just for a moment think. And I know I can ask those who are 46 and above or 26 and above. You'll tell me, you long for the days when your children were home. Tell me if that's the case or not. Right? You and you find yourself telling the younger parents, enjoy them while you can. Because they fly off pretty quickly. Because they are the sweetness of our life. They are what makes life beautiful. You're constantly thinking about them. You're constantly investing in them in all sorts of different ways. Again, another ayah which basically says this desire is part of you. زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ وَالْبَنِينَ. Talking about the men here. Ask if you have a relative or a family member or a community member who doesn't have children. Ask them. Ask them. And you'll see. You'll see how lucky you are. If you have children, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you boys or girls, whatever they are really the beauty of this life. And we need to be very thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes we are always critical. Oh my God, they're giving me a hard time for this and that. But just for a moment, think about those and ask those who do not have children. What is their response? How are they feeling? I have a relative who doesn't have children. And they would love, and she and he, both husband and wife, love children. And you can see it in every time they're around children, they're so loving and so kind. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not bless them with children. So we need to be thankful. In Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of these two prophets, Ibrahim alayhi salam and Zakaria alayhi salam. Coming back to the translations, قال ربي إني وهن العظم مني واشتعل الرأس شيبا ولم أكن بدعائك ربي شقيا. Whose dua was that, by the way? Any? Zakaria alayhi salam. Can somebody, by the way, I'm just kind of going on a tangent here for a second. Can somebody point to some very beautiful linguistic beauty in this ayah? Something that's very amazing. By any chance, anybody knows? So towards the end of the ayah, there's a word, وَاشْتَعَلَ الرَّأْسُ شَيْبًا. You know what that means? وَاشْتَعَلَ الرَّأْسُ شَيْبًا. Ishta'ala means is on fire. Something when it catches fire, you say ishta'ala. Ishta'ala الرَّأْسُ شَيْبًا. The gray hair is appearing in my hair as if my head is on fire with gray hair. Now you really have to sometimes appreciate, basically saying I'm getting old. My hair is getting gray and I'm getting weaker and older. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, bless me with an offspring. But Zakaria alayhi salam, who's the other very famous prophet of Allah, who made very special dua for children? Anyone can remember? Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was blessed with Ismail and then later on with Ishaq. So, my brothers and sisters, these examples show you who our children are, what is our relationship with our children, because this is the only relationship where a mother could be perfectly happy if her daughter is more beautiful than her. A father is perfectly happy if his son is better than him, makes more money than him, has a better, higher status than him, gets into life even further than what he was able to make it. That is the only relationship for the most part. Because typically if you work for a company and you have peers, and I see Junaid Bhai shaking his head. If you work for a company, you know if you have a peer, you don't want them to become your manager tomorrow or get ahead in life, because you always have that professional jealousy, if I want to call it that way. Even within the community, within the family, you see people, other people, and you kind of sort of, why couldn't I be that person, right? There is that feeling, maybe not in the negative sense, but there is that feeling. The only relationship in the family is when your son or your daughter are better than, or are reaching a status that's better than you. You love that. You're proud of that. Oh, I couldn't go to school, but look at my son. He's an engineer. He's a scientist. He's a doctor. He's a lawyer, whatever that is. And you will admit your faults in front of people. The same thing will not happen if it was someone else. So, brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with this. Now the question I have is, if you have something that is so core to who you are, it's so part of who your being, is part of your flesh and soul, then what would you want to do with that? Right? What would you want to do with that? You take care of them. The question is how? What are some of the things? And again, this is non-exhaustive. This is a list that can continue on. But I wanted to share with you just some thoughts, things that I feel that are pretty universal, things that if we only consciously focus on, and I want to say this especially those who have younger children, who still have their son and daughter at home, and they are able to make a change. So inshallah, I'll share with you the next few minutes what are some of the things you and I can do to really make a difference in the life of our children. Again, this particular example, being a role model. Now, I think it was alluded to this in the presentations this morning. Without being the role model father or a role model mother, what do you think is going to happen? Now, I'll give you an example. In America, many of us may not have other extended families, or may have an extended family who lives far away. Many who are here, who are maybe, socializing with their cousins or distant relatives, or even community members, they feel they are their family. The question is, your children, who will they look up to? We talk about the role models in this country, the celebrity role models, the movie stars, the sportsmen and women. But believe it or not, brothers and sisters, the impact of a father and the impact of a mother is irreplaceable. This particular role model is what everyone is looking towards. You may not know it, you may not realize it. I'm sure you've had moments where your parents were sitting on the same table and maybe kind of smiling in an interesting way, seeing you say something they used to say 30 years ago. I'm sure you've seen those moments. The same thing will happen with your children. There will come a time, inshallah, but remember this, they will do what you did. They will do what you did. They will behave the same way. And you may start, those whose children are older now, those who may have grandchildren will start to notice that, because they have no other example. They have no other example of how to have a household. Think about this for a second. They don't know how to run a household. All they have to fall back to is what they saw you doing. Because remember, when you had children, younger children, what are you doing with them? My dad did it this way. My mother did it this way. This was how 8 a.m. breakfast was on the table. You eat breakfast or you leave. If you don't get breakfast, you're trying to imitate and repeat those type of practices in your life. Aren't you? I think we are all unconsciously or subconsciously, we're doing the same thing that our parents have done, or at least we remember doing in our parents' households. So being a role model is one of the key things you can do. Now people will say, well, we live in a very different era. This is the era of internet. our parents didn't see that. You can blame it to whoever. You can blame it on television, you can blame it on the internet, the social media, whatever you want to blame it on. But believe me, at the end of the day, broken families don't stem, in isolation just because of the internet or just because of TV or just because of social media. They are stemming from the role of the parents. Think about yourself. If you've been blessed with really very good parents, and I think most of us are blessed with that. We have a parent, I don't want to, mention his name, but everyone knows him, mashallah. You look at his children who was present here, you look at their children, you're so proud of them. Because this role model is what keeps you going. Even though they may kind of take a zigzag in their 20s and early 30s, but as soon as they have a family life, they'll come back to that model they've seen in their parents' house. Now, this very famous saying, "Kama tudinu tudan." What goes around comes around. Actually happens. If your children see you respecting your parents, if you're lucky enough to have your parents with you in your household, then that is a gem, that is a blessing that is out of this world. And if you can't train your children, if you can't show your children how to deal with your mother, because they look at you. So my children, for example, knew that there's no way they're going to get a phone when they get into high school. And they kept trying and trying and trying, and finally the eldest one figured out how to get it. Is talking to his grandmother, telling Grandma, can you ask Baba to get me a phone? And eventually when my mom said to me, yeah, why don't you buy him a phone? I argued a little bit. I said, okay, fine. You know what you're asking for. They know exactly how the household is run. They know exactly how to deal with their parents because they see you dealing with your parents. So being a role model and understanding that this is what's going to happen is very important. Now, you want my child doesn't go to the masjid. My question is, do you go to the masjid? My child uses foul language. What kind of language were you using in the household? Those relationships, they are very natural. The children will mimic their parents as they grow. Keeping that environment healthy. And this is, my brothers and sisters, and I always refer to this story. I really love this story. You and I are thinking about, okay, well, I think I can train my children, maybe I'll take care of them. You don't know if you're going to see your grandchildren or not, but you're hoping, well, maybe inshallah they will be there in front of you in your lifetime, and you may have something to do with them. But I'm sure every one of us, especially those who are into that age, are thinking about their great-grandchildren and their great-great-grandchildren. Who is going to take care of them? People are talking, well, I wish I would have gone back to Pakistan back when I was here. When I came and got my job and, I did my 5 years, I should have gone back, or I should have gone back to India or Bangladesh or Saudi Arabia or Egypt. All those thoughts cross everyone's mind. When you see something happening in your family, you're like, oh my God, I wish I've left. My brothers and sisters, the story of Khidr and Musa alayhi salam. Anyone remembers the story? Right? First story was when they made a hole in the ship, right? Okay. What was the second story? Killed that child, right? And what was the third story? Erected the wall. Now, obviously, at that time, and everyone knows the story. Musa alayhi salam was kind of, he had it. He was like, okay, what's going on here? And Khidr alayhi salam was like, okay, fine, I'll tell you what happened. But what was his response on the third story? What was the statement he made? وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. What does that mean? And even in case here, obviously it refers to parents, but I would even say when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the word ab, I'm looking at this side of the hall. If we are all worried about this, I and you and we are the solution to this. وَكَانَ أَبُوهُمَا صَالِحًا. And some scholars say this was referring to somebody in their forefathers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala generations later decided to protect the progeny of that pious man back when, and protected his grandchildren. So brothers and sisters, I think the solution is very simple. You're not going to be able to protect your children 2 or 3 generations down the road. There's no way. You can't even protect your children, your own children, let alone the next generation and the generation after. So what is the solution? The solution is simple. Be that role model. Be that pious person. Exhibit those qualities you want to see in your children. Make frequent dua, inshallah, we'll come to that. So, to have good children, look in the mirror. When you go home, many people have a mirror on the entrance of their house, right? I'm sure in the bathroom for sure, or maybe in their bedrooms. When you go home tonight, brothers and sisters, look in the mirror. Are you that person you want your child to mimic in your language, in your adab, in your etiquettes, in your business dealings? Are you the one, your child? I'm pretty certain if I asked most of you, they will say, those of you especially who are blessed and they saw their parents and who lived with their parents, most of you will say, I wish I could be like my father. But do you think your child one day will say that about you? And if that's the case, alhamdulillah. If that's not the case, then I want you to look in the mirror and seriously say, what's missing? The second advice I want to share with you is the advice that Prophet ﷺ, because again, brothers and sisters, here's the bottom line. We are all here, alhamdulillah, being part of the Islamic movement, part of Islamic work, understand this life and the purpose of life and where we are headed. And I love this example, and I digress for a second, inshallah, come back. And I heard this example on one of the lectures, so I'll give credit to where it's due. The speaker was in this convention, he said, close your eyes for a second, for maybe 30 seconds. And imagine you are on a plane. Imagine you're on a plane. You are in first class. You are really being treated very well. You have food, you have great entertainment system, you're very comfortable. It's one of the most comfiest airlines. The question you should ask yourself, what is that one question or two questions everyone should ask themselves? You're on a plane, you opened your eyes and you found yourself on a plane. And you've been treated great. What are the one or two or three questions you're going to ask yourself or should come to your mind? Can someone help me? Direct questions. You opened your eyes and you found yourself on a plane and it's going somewhere. Yes? What's that? How? Oh my God. Stand up. Stand up. I want you to really recognize him. What's your name? Hanif. Hanif says, how did I get here? How did I get here? What is the second question?
Why am I here?
What's that?
Why am I here?
Why am I? Why am I here and how did I get here? Yeah, why am I here? How did I get here? And what is the last question? Maybe?
Where am I going?
Where am I going? Where am I going? If you're not asking this question, regardless of what kind of first class or business class you are in, yeah, you need to be asking that question. So we all understand, I don't think we are all asking the right questions. And we should be thinking about it. But in this questioning phase, yarhamkumullah, in this questioning phase, you start to realize something very important. And that is, and we talk